Okay, are both sides ready to proceed? Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, our procedure has the state go first. State, when you're ready, please begin.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court? Members of the jury. Rage. That was the defendant's answer. In this case, the evidence will show that on the morning of September 1st of 2023, the morning after the defendant stabbed his parents to death, after he led the Northport Police Department on a high-speed chase down and up I-75, after he ran through woods and swam through canals for almost 8 hours to avoid capture. The morning after, he sat in an interview room with detectives, and they asked him a question. What happened last night? What happened? Help us understand. And you'll hear that he answered with one word: rage. A rage that he described had been boiling until it reached the point the previous night where he decided to do it. As you've been instructed, Dima Tower, the defendant in this case, has been charged with 3 criminal offenses for his conduct on the night of August 31st of 2023. 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the murder of Robbie and Jennifer Tower, and 1 count of fleeing to elude law enforcement. In this trial, the state will prove to you that the defendant is guilty as charged by presenting evidence. In this trial, you'll hear evidence, and you'll see it in witness testimony, in physical exhibits, in video, in photographs, in the results of forensic testing, and in this case, you will also hear the defendant's own words. For the witness testimony, you'll hear from civilians. You'll hear from Jonna Walton. She was a neighbor on Malakote Road of the Towers. She knew them personally, they were friends. You'll hear how, on the night of August 31st, she was asleep in her bed. You'll hear how close to midnight she was woken up by sounds at the door, ringing, banging. You'll hear how she heard a woman's voice call out for help. And that voice was so desperate that she did not recognize it. You'll hear how she ran down the stairs. And a few moments later, she called law enforcement, 911. And you'll hear how she opened the door. No one was there, but she saw the blood. She saw stains of blood. And you'll see photographs of that blood, starting at her door, her doorbell, going across the driveway, down, all the way to the Tower home. You'll also hear from civilian Miss Melissa Snow. She was staff at a local preschool near the Lower Road exit of I-75 in Venice. You'll hear how she went to work that day, about 7:30, like normal, and there was lockdown because of the defendant at large in the area. You'll hear how she saw someone matching that description, and she notified law enforcement. And he was heading in the direction that about 30 minutes later, he was finally apprehended. You'll hear from Kay Rosas. She was a store clerk at the Shell gas station, where the defendant was ultimately arrested. You'll see the video of him going through that store, and you'll see him walking like it was any other day, like nothing had happened. You'll also hear from law enforcement witnesses in this trial. You'll hear from Officer Tyler Ragakis of the Northport Police Department. You'll hear how he was the first officer on scene at 1240 Mallicott Road, and he saw the defendant getting ready and getting in his car, and he called out to him. And you'll hear from his testimony, but you'll also see it in his dash cam footage. You'll see the defendant ignore him, get in his car, and speed away around another officer coming down the road. You'll see for about 30 minutes the defendant's driving. First, as he's speeding through the residential streets of Northport, running stop signs. At one point he goes, you'll see, down the opposite side of the road to try to get away from officers. You'll see when he merges on I-75, you'll see him drive around cars and speed towards Charlotte County until he turns around and goes back towards Venice. And you'll see where he finally abandons the car and takes off running into the woods, where he's able to avoid officers for that entire night up until the next morning. You'll hear testimony from Detective Cade Ryer. He was an officer at the time with the Venice Police Department. He was the one who went out to location where a sighting of a potential subject was called out near the Lower Road exit. And you'll hear how he happened to be checking the Shell gas station at the same time the defendant was walking in the back of the building, and they were able to make the arrest. You'll also hear from Corporal St. Jean. He was the lead detective assigned to this case in this investigation. You'll hear the steps of his investigation, identifying a suspect, and you'll hear how, after the defendant was arrested, he and another detective, Detective Chippendale, with the Northport Police Department, went to the police station in Venice to meet with the defendant, where they conducted an interview. That interview was video recorded, so you will hear in this trial the defendant's own words about what happened. You will hear that prior to that night, despite his parents being loving, the defendant was angry. Angry at life, that it was not turning out the way he expected. And that anger was building and boiling. You'll hear how that night was not the first time he thought about killing his parents. You'll hear how that day started out like any other normal day for him, that he went for a full shift at his job, came home, then went to his car and had a drink and began to think. You'll hear how that's when the thoughts came again, that he wasn't happy in killing his parents. You'll hear how he went back into the house, into his bedroom, and he continued to have that thought. And that's when he decided to do it. That's what he was going to do, and you'll hear this in the interview, that he was going to get it over with. You'll hear him describe as he walks to the kitchen, takes a knife out of the knife block, a steak knife, and he walks to the master bedroom. You'll hear how that day, that night, there was no argument. There was no confrontation. His parents were asleep in their bed. He walked into the bedroom, he went to his father's side of the bed, and he started to stab into the darkness. You'll hear him describe how he stabbed too many times that he couldn't even count. You'll hear the defendant say that the knife slipped away as he was stabbing. And you'll hear how losing the knife was not enough to stop him, that he walked back to the kitchen, grabbed a second knife out of the block, and walked back to the bedroom. And these are his own words, to finish what he started. You'll hear how, as he's stabbing his father tried to fight him off. But there was blood everywhere, and the defendant was too strong. You'll hear how his father, Robbie Tower, went to the living room to try to get away, and the defendant followed him and continued to stab until Robbie Tower died, collapsed on the carpet of the living room floor. You'll hear how the defendant's mother woke up while this was happening and tried to defend her husband, but she wasn't strong enough. You'll hear how after she was stabbed, she fled to the neighbor's house for help. And you'll hear how the defendant followed her and took her back inside. You'll hear how the defendant did not immediately finish killing her. You'll hear how he had things to say first. You'll hear how she sat on the couch while he stood over her, telling her those things. You'll hear how while she was on the couch, she cried and pled for her life. But the defendant didn't care. And when he was done, that's when he decided to finish killing her. You'll hear how he stabbed her again, over and over again, in her face and her neck. You'll hear how she didn't die on the couch. She was able to crawl away on the carpet looking for her husband. And you'll hear that's where she died, lying next to him. You'll hear how, when he was done, the defendant knew someone would have called the police and he had to move fast. So you'll hear how he made a series of calculated decisions after they were dead. You'll hear how he took the knife that he had and he cleaned it and he put it in the knife block. He cleaned himself off, he grabbed some belongings, and he went to his car to leave. You'll hear how he saw law enforcement get there. He heard the officer call out, and he didn't give a shit. Those are his words. You'll hear again how that night was not the first time he thought about hurting his parents. But that was the night that he decided to finally do it. And you'll hear motive. When detectives ask him, how could your rage get to that point? Help us understand what happened. He answered that he was fed up with this country and the bullshit that this country had to offer him. And his parents, they were a part of that. And he didn't like them as people anymore. And so he knew he would kill them. In this trial, you'll also hear from law enforcement witnesses that specialize in forensics and evidence collection. You'll hear from crime scene technician Elizabeth Walker. You'll see the photographs that she took and see the videos that she documented of 1240 Malacott Road and the surrounding houses that night. You'll see the signs of a violent struggle. You'll see the bedroom where the killing started and the bloody sheets, still wet when they were photographed. You'll see blood stains going up to the ceiling, surrounding everything around the bed. You'll see the living room. You'll see the stains on the couch where Robbie and Jennifer Tower were. And you'll see their final resting place on the living room carpet. and you see the blood stains going from the front door to the neighbor's house, the Jennifer Tower, trying to get help. You'll also see the knives that were collected that the defendant used to kill his parents. You'll also hear from crime scene technician Courtney Stender. She assisted with processing and documenting the vehicle that the defendant fled in and abandoned that night. And you'll see pictures of that vehicle. Next, you'll hear from Charlene Webster with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. You'll hear how she received the knives and blood samples from the Northport Police Department in evidence, and she performed testing on those samples. You'll hear about her procedures for doing that, and you'll hear how, at the conclusion of her testing, that Robbie and Jennifer Tower's blood, as well as the defendant's, were identified on the knives that he admitted to using. Lastly, you'll hear from Dr. Russell Vega. He's the chief medical examiner for the 12th Circuit. He examined the victims in the home where they died. He also performed formal autopsies in the medical examiner's office. Through his testimony and the pictures that you'll have to see, you will see the extent and the quantity of the stab wounds to Robbie and Jennifer Tower. The evidence will show that Robbie Tower had 68 penetrating wounds. Wounds to his scalp, his neck, shoulders, chest, his back, arms, and one of his legs. You'll hear that Robbie Tower had perforations of a carotid artery, larynx, and his left lung. You'll also see and hear that Jennifer Tower had 79 penetrating stab wounds, clustered over her scalp, her head, her back, her right shoulder, her chest and arms, and 38 stab wounds to her neck. You'll hear that she had perforations of her carotid artery, her internal jugular vein, and even her spinal cord. At the end of this trial, and the close of all the evidence, after the judge instructs you in the law, the state will ask you to render a verdict that aligns with three things: the evidence that you will be presented, the law, and your common sense. We will ask that you render a verdict that holds the defendant accountable and that you find the defendant guilty as charged. Thank you.